second. Cool, yeah, because we just went live. Well, here we are then. So, what we have here, dear viewer, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world, is two Ians, not one, but two Ians that neither of them really want to talk about the things we want to talk about. So, in terms of an Ian-based thing, it's not going to go so well. Yeah.
I'll talk about it. I just can't give facts.
You can't give facts. Well, look, what I'll tell you. All right, is other Ian just going to sit there with censored on his face?
No, I will speak later on.
I am concerned there is a slight white supremacist look to you there.
There is a slight white supremacist look to that.
If you could just go and get like a couple of batch of matchsticks and hold them up next to you, I think you'll be fitting just right.
Hello there, Bobby. Bobby, you've joined us at a time where I've just announced that the two Ians that are here, one top left and one top right, don't actually want to talk about what I thought they would because of various reasons. And so really, from this, I have to only say that Ians are pretty useless in this sort of an occasion.
The free speech is dead.
Free speech is dead, especially if you're called Ian. Maybe that's how free speech ends.
They start with the Ians and then they just randomly
Let's
move
start
across
with
the
Ians. Once we've gone through Ians, we'll go on to someone else.
Dave.
I will stay near the end of the alphabet for that reason.
I can talk. I can just offer no form of proof. Is the fact of it, which is pretty normal.
Ians are no good. How about Dons? Hello there, Don in Canada. Hello to everybody in the chat. Mitchell and Johnny and Rev and Baron and Mac in GMI. And good evening to you, Bobby. Lovely to have you along. Hold
Thanks.
tight. Here we go. The first rule of Drone and Sundry Club is but I actually haven't got one. I've got a red screwdriver. Common sense is banned here. There's a red card for common sense. We don't accept that. Oh, there we are. He's got to read something. So I emailed on your stream on Sunday night, Ian. You mentioned that that letters were going out to people from Chinese manufacturers. I hadn't received one. What I have received is an awful lot of special offers valid until the end of this month for stuff out of China. But you suggest that letters are going out. I emailed T-Motor and three separate names from T-Motor said, oh, no, it's no problem. It'll be fine. Absolutely fine. Carry on. Crack on. But you think otherwise, Ian? He's muted. He's muted.
Yeah. Yes. Failed part number one. It all goes back a few weeks because I started getting whispers of there may be effects on some unexpected stuff a few weeks ago. And when I mean unexpected, just bits we all take for granted on a daily basis. Flight controllers, ESCs, things like this. But nothing concrete. And then Monday, it seems, a manufacturer, and I'll start with it as a manufacturer, emailed out a number of their their retailers to say that they won't be able to ship flight FC, ESC, and VTX from end of this month due to the new Chinese export restrictions. Now, I have had an email with this, but I was asked not to share that for varying reasons publicly, simply because there's various pieces of data on it. But I didn't actually name the manufacturer. However, someone else on my stream did, and then I backed up that was the company. So this has been seen by more than one person. There is multiples. Now, this then sort of aligns with a few other things. We've been seeing certain offers around, certain amounts of pushing equipment, but also weird stuff like Avatar goggles being out of stock, but actually they've got the Fat Shock version but not the Avatar version. But if you wanted to get around a restriction, that would be a real good way of doing it, because technically the Fat Shark version is a US made, not US made, but US owned product, whereas the Avatar version is a Chinese product. So that was that. Now, I've been doing a bit of digging and talking to people, and I've spoken to so many people in the industry. No one will go on record, because no one really understands how it's going to affect them, it seems, yet. But all the noises I've got is when you read that documentation, it's very easy to get hung up on 7 kilos industrial, all of this big stuff. But there's a number of very interesting parts that if you dig into, like high performance drones and stuff like this. And a couple of vendors have told me this has been left very loose to allow the authorities to wield it as they see fit per company. Now, I've spoke to a couple of companies who said, no, it's fine, we're not going to be affected. I've spoken to others who've gone, we're waiting and seeing. I've spoken to others who've gone, we're very worried. And that's where the level of varying is on this. And I even think they don't even know themselves. I think some are just going to carry on until they're told they can't. And that's where it is. Now, there has been given I was sent some information that would imply that supplying to individual users may not be an issue. So manufacturers selling direct to a single consumer, one item. You want a flight controller to order from, say, one of the manufacturers, you go on their website and they may be able to ship it to you on an individual basis. But that isn't clear either. What is definitely come out of all of the comments I've had, though, is supplying on bulk quantity to retailers is going to be an issue and is going to require a license each time that shipment needs to go out. It's not even a license to sell over a period. It's we have this shipment to this person, we require permission to send it, and we don't know how that's going to look. Now, I had spoke to a few people associated with some retailers, vendors, and there are some very worried people out there right now, especially if it means consumers would be able to buy direct, but not through retailers, because that's just going to destroy them overnight. You know?
Yes. Well, we're just going to wait 2 days and we'll find out, won't we?
And I think it'll probably take.
Line,
I think it'll probably take a month because everyone is stocked up. From what I understand, retailers have been banging in stock to make sure, whilst there's possibly like a turbulent period. I think the problem is, it's when stuff goes out of stock, will we start seeing it coming through? If it affects individual orders with manufacturers direct, we'll see that really quick. You'll go on their website and they'll say, sorry, we can't ship. What I am absolutely hearing in this is there is more to this than many of us realized. It is potentially far, far bigger. I suppose the interesting question is, because a lot of people have been talking about it, and how much do we think the Chinese government are willing to burn an industry over this? And then you got to start looking at, is this actually about that side of the world, or is it about something else? I'm
going to ask Bobby if he's got an opinion in a second, but I think we mustn't forget there's a lot of world outside of NATO and the USA. Another 6 countries have just been allowed into BRICS. This doesn't affect us here in BRICS countries. I don't know what it'll be like for you guys. We'll be fine. But that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And joining that now is Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Iran. So we're really happy here in South Africa that we're rolling with Iran now and Saudi Arabia. And there's another one. So, you and your...
So if it's Iran, then it means that the Russian supply of military drones is assured.
Yep, exactly. Yep, it was just last week that enlargement of BRICS was announced at the summit that was here. So I think it's naive to think that China will fall apart because they can't sell stuff to Europe and America. There's more people.
What I had heard is someone had said something to me, and I had never really thought of it, and it was the drone situation has just landed on the desk at the very highest levels of the CCP, and I think then they've not quite fully grasped how much proliferation of that technology there's been over the last few years. And I don't mean like DJI, but flight controllers, what we can do is incredible for the cost. If you actually break it down, the technology, in many ways, we're ahead of what the military could do. And I'm not sure that all of this hasn't somewhat slipped under the radar and when you're starting to see the videos like those drones, there's a video this week of a drone being used to destroy a infrared tracking site. There's a point where you look at this and go, yes, this will hurt us, but the hurt is minimal. How big do we really think the drone industry is? Is it with 5 million, 50 million, 100 million? It's pennies in the grand scheme of things compared to the other things in China. And if you know, if you think the drone industry is worth 100 million and they ended that, I don't think anyone would batter an eyelid. They'd just go, well, you can start making something else now. There you go. You know, just go do something else. So I think we have to be careful not to just assume it's too big to disappear. It really isn't.
But they could keep China going for donkey's years, just China for itself. Yeah, I don't know. Bobby, you're new to the scene. What's your opinions on this one?
I mean, there's lots to unpack. One of them is, I think that people don't really understand like how difficult it is to manage sometimes your distribution network. So like there's a lot of value-added resellers throughout the globe, all over the place, not just in America. Like in America, there's the VARs, the CEOs have LinkedIn profiles. You can talk with them. They have conferences. Like there's a face. There are dozens, if not probably hundreds, of value-added resellers that you don't know about in some small cities all throughout Europe and the Middle East and Africa and Latin America and other parts of Southeast Asia. So it's not something that the vendors have a really good tight grip on, that I'd imagine. I know, there was certain Chinese OEMs that I think had Russian branding on them. I think that's because someone's selling stuff out the back door. It's not something that is particularly because again their supply chain is pretty well contained. But if I'm one dude and I know what all these other people are building in the drone industry without signing stuff, because we have a supply chain that's pretty loose and it's pretty tight in the United States and in the West. Only a handful of companies are making products for other people. But you look at China, you can go down the street and buy all these other different components. One thing that Ian to mention to his point is the drone industry always follows the piggyback, like the backs of this industry, and everybody speculates, what if China goes, we have a war with Taiwan and all this war with China, etc. I've got, as a guy whose whole livelihood comes from drones, I have way bigger things to worry about than the drone industry when and if that happens. It's just the repercussions of that are pretty big. And the goal, I think, one of your colleagues, Gary, I think consistently disagrees, or I think tries to mischaracterize some of my posts, in that it's not admonishing the American drone industry. It's highlighting the difference in products and ultimately creating a path for how do we achieve product parity? How do we catch up? And I think there's ways for us to do that. I think that ultimately, if you were to ban, so this export control thing, I think that it varies depending on who you would talk to. Certain companies will say, no, it's not that big of a deal, and others will say it is. Some of the largest customers I know aren't that concerned about it because they are able to provide proof and certify that their sales channels are not used for military applications. But I can only speak for the value-added resellers that I know in North America and a handful in Europe. I don't know. There's many hundreds more that I don't have, I'm not even familiar with, and they exist because at the end of the day, this is we're, as Patrick Egan likes to say, they're toys, right? So I think that the concern is valid. I think at the end of the day, it actually hurts Western countries disproportionately, the same way that an immediate ban of Chinese drones hurts Western countries, because it's not going to stop China from selling their drones to other countries who don't have the same military capabilities. So, countries like Pakistan and not just BRICS nations, right? Other countries as well that are not affiliated, that are just not, NATO allies, who have no drones, are now going to have access and to purchase this type of technology for pennies on the dollar. That in many ways, outclasses the things that the NATO countries are paying tens of thousands of dollars for. So it is ultimately, in my opinion, like short-sighted policy to enable that. Now, eventually, we should obviously be weaning off of the Chinese drones, especially for and I think there's no exception for defense purposes. But from a consumer level, like we have to build out the semiconductors and that type of supply. These chip fabrication facilities that are going to take years, not just to build, but to like staff, find the skilled labor who knows how to do this type of stuff. And everybody I think oversimplifies this. And so I have to give DIU credit. Without them, there really wouldn't be an industrial drone base in America. And I think a lot of their work has been taken out of context and maybe politicized by other drone companies, American drone companies, for specific, I think, private interests on the state level. Anyway, that's my opinion of this. I think that this is just one more tit for tat, ultimately, that disproportionately hurts the West. Our businesses, our enterprise customers ultimately rely on DJI solutions. There's unfortunately, like if there was a drone company that could do all of the same things as DJI that was in America, we'd all know about them. We'd all be buying their stuff, right? Like that, it's very obvious. So it's not like just because the rest of us who are unwilling to drink this Kool-Aid or speak truth to power are considered critical of the American drone industry. Quite the contrary. Most of us have built our lives around this and our livelihood. So anyway, I appreciate your guys' insight. I'm honored to join you guys.
Oh, we'll beat that out of you, that's for sure. Can't be having that.
Has he not seen this program before?
He's not seen it, has he? He's not been here before.
Clearly not.
No. The important thing for America and the West, Europe's just as guilty, is to admit that we've fallen behind and we've got to catch up. Until you start at that point, well, you can't move forward, and I think that message is getting through now.
What's interesting, is if we think about a lot of the stuff in FPV and other stuff that could be banned, it's actually none of it is particularly difficult. It's all manufactured in China, but we could do it anyway. It's all that side of it. The one thing that China actually runs away, well, it's two things. They run away, number one, with video links. So DJI have pretty much completely own the wireless digital space. And in fact, you'd argue they have the most advanced wireless video technology, period. Outside of drones as well, they are sending wireless HD video over 20-30 kilometers with less than 100 milliseconds latency. There's just no other products out there that can keep up with that. But then you have the tight integration on the Mavics and their consumer and their industrial drones. That stack, it's the Apple stack is the term I use it. They own the software, they own the hardware, and they deliver it better than anyone else. And if they did want to cause a problem, it's the wireless video links they should go after first. That's where you would really start the ball, and the consumer drones. Those the ready to fly stuff and the wireless video links, because that would be the biggest harm. Interestingly, there is, I might get in trouble for saying this. There is, but there isn't. There is only one non-Chinese digital wireless video link, and that is HD0. And it does have links to China. And I don't mean it's a Chinese company, but DiviMath has a very large Chinese arm, but Carl is American. But he comes from China and various things. So there are links. They're not a Chinese company. They're a US entity, but there are links. What there aren't in the marketplace is any dedicated, only US, only UK or Europe-based wireless digital FPV companies. And again, it's an area we've just fallen hugely behind.
I think there are some that are slowly coming out. I think that I have to give credit to the folks from, in Croatia, Orca, have been working on stuff for quite some time. I know many of you who are familiar with it. They're like, it's been years. It has been years, but it's coming. Doodle Labs has their own digital radio link. I don't have one here on my desk, but they have a number of really, they're about the same size. This is the Voxel 2 Minis. They're about the same size. They stack. This is, but the cost is the real thing that I think is the difference. And this is ultimately through this is, I don't know, I'm not trying to get political. The reality is China's economy has boomed due to the fact that they have done the manufacturing for the West. And companies in the United States, and I'm sure all across the Western world, have outsourced labor to less expensive places to increase and scale profits. The most valuable companies on earth, with the exception of Saudi Aramco, are generally Western firms, right? And one of them in particular, the one who makes the device I'm talking to you, and the one right here, became the most valuable company by leveraging that type of labor. And I think that's something that we don't really recognize. Like it is in some ways a self-inflicted wound over generations. It's important for us to change. It is not going to change overnight. It is going to take several years. To answer a few questions, I guess, Dan, one is this export ban only impacts enterprise and public safety customers. And I can tell you most of the drones and first responder community is pretty reliant on DJI currently. It's due to not just the radio link, but also the payload, which I think is like a huge part. The camera plus gimbal integration, the optics alone is really, really like, we have to give DJI credit for where credit is due. And same with these other Chinese firms. The Doodle Labs, I don't know where these chats are in particular, but there was this question about like mesh radio that they're kind of leagues behind DJI. It depends, because as you've seen, there we go. Yeah. Depending on what level of DJI. So like the OcuSync 3, the current latest and greatest, is pretty remarkable. The difference is that these like the Doodle Labs radios, depending on which one you get, like if you get just the regular ISM, it's 2.4 gigahertz, and it's not as, if you were to do apples to apples, it probably isn't as good as the OcuSync 3, but in like a EW contested environment, it performs orders of magnitude better. Same with something like the Helix one, which is for defense and which is encrypted. I think it's important to admit and recognize that DJI is not and same with these Chinese, DJI and Autel in particular are not defense firms. They're consumer companies that are using generally consumer grade technology, right? Even for enterprise application. They don't have the hardened radio links that a Silvus or Persistent Systems has. That, yes, they're more expensive, but they perform much better. Same with Domo Tactical and Doodle, as I mentioned. I think that's a clear differentiator. But cost is also one thing. And a gentleman from Skydio was mentioning this yesterday. And maybe I'm being a little bit impatient. It's only been a few years that the drone industry has taken off here in the West. But we need not just another like 5 years, we need another decade, 15 years to really, look back and say, did we close this gap the way we intended to? And it's going to take a lot of work, because you don't have a lot of, like, I'll touch on this real quick. The cameras are a huge part. There's very, very few firms that have the capability of developing the same type of optics and stabilization as DJI, let alone for the price. And then if you look at the enterprise side, you're paying 10x more just for the payload, and it becomes really cost prohibitive. So, and I again, the secondary impacts are that these you ban DJI, other entities, your power company, your police department, are forced to purchase other hardware that may or may not perform as well as they're expecting, is more difficult to use, etc. At least today, right? A year from now, 2-3 years from now, this may be different, but I'm worried that, and you can talk to the end users. Like I speak to folks in public safety all the time. They have a very difficult job. DJI, as you mentioned, Ian touched, they have a great integration. They've reduced the cognitive load of the user. It's very easy to use, and they can afford it. It's something that we know what the problem is. I think the challenge is, and I'll use the analogy of a boulder in the road, and we all agree, like, China is ahead. The question is, how do we change it? And we can agree how we move the boulder, and our processes to do that, our prescriptions may differ, but the end goal is the same. We all want the same end result. I think we have to recognize that through these types of discussions. It's not that people are pro-China or pro-America, et cetera. We really care about the industry. We're looking for the ability to stand on our own legs that are not reliant on one tech giant.
I think it's important to remember. Oh, hello. And sorry, I'm late. He's not called in, so he'll be able to talk to us. I think it's also important to remember that how we've got here and the exceptionalism of the West that's driven us to this point. I I can't think of a good analogy. There must be a nursery story that where people suddenly wake up and smell the coffee, as it were. There must be in there somewhere. I just can't remember it. But the way the rules are being batted about and being changed and molded to fit in. I'm talking about aviation rules and things now, to fit into certain suppliers or the people that lobby the most. Skydio being the primo one there, but they're not the first and not the worst in a lot of ways. Other people have come before them, and another thing that's going to fail the industry. I was hoping that Josh might yet to come in from Flight Test. If you haven't seen their video, it's pretty shocking that and I've forgotten the name of Edgewater Park, even Edgewater Park's not being given a freer. So we've got this nonsense about where stuff's made and people banning stuff and all that sort of stuff, not catching up. But we're going to lose an entire generation of potential UAS operators that will be safe and well trained the way they're going with the freers. I don't know if anyone wants to start talking about that now, because we've been going 25 minutes on that first thing. I think it's a shocker, an absolute shocker.
People just don't realise that NPRM that went out and the AMA and everyone else is crying, oh, we managed to get the worst bits taken out, we've changed it all. No, you've postponed these things. Look, at this time, remember that phrase, search, it's about 14 or 15 times it's mentioned in the final rule, at this time. What the FAA did in response to all the comments was basically say, okay, we realise we can't actually do all this right now, so we're going to suspend some of these things we propose until later on when the technology is there and perhaps the amount of pushback has dropped a bit, and then we're going to bring them in. And the FAA said we'll only ever need 4,000 freers, and we're going to age them out and they'll whatever. And it looked like they put that on the back burner, but really they have just used word salad to get around that. And so they don't want to issue any more freers than they can, and they won't because I know the FPV Freedom Coalition's had a lot turned down, and so far there's only about 500 have been issued, and we're how many weeks out from the deadline now. And so what's happening here is that people are just seem to be ignoring the fact that the NPRM will become the final rule over time. These things will be rolled back in, network, remote ID, pay to fly, all that sort of stuff. The people have been placated, and I think so few people have ever had to deal with bureaucracies on a regular basis. They believe what they're told, and they look on the bright side. As someone who's had to fight bureaucracies all their life, I see the same games playing out time and time again, and people are just so naive they don't realize what's coming. So the whole freer thing is ridiculous. And even more stupid is that some of the reasons for rejecting freers was because there was a building in the freer zone. You can't have a building in the freer zone. And I'm thinking, what difference does that make? Why is it that you can't have a building in a freer zone because it's too dangerous? But if it's not so dangerous that you can't fly in exactly the same place with remote ID, what makes remote ID on your model make it intrinsically safer? It is ridiculous. And so you look through the smoke and mirrors, and you can see exactly what's going on. They don't want to issue more than 4,000 freers, which for a national model flying body with 2,600 clubs and a country with 115,000 educational institutions, 4,000 is nowhere near enough, and it's never going to be enough. So people need to wise up, and I'm going to do a video in the next couple of days when I say it's time that we change the way rules are made in this particular instance. As happens right now, and people in the UK know, the regulator comes along with a whole lot of suggestions and a whole lot of new rules, throws them out for consultation, and people go, oh, this is terrible. And the regulator goes, yeah, we know, but we're going to do it anyway. Instead, why are regulators who don't do what we do, they don't know what we do, they don't have the experience, why are they making the rules? Why don't we as a community with the knowledge, experience, understanding, why don't we make the rules and then present them to the regulator and say, these are the rules that we agree to follow and comply with. And you need to accept them and put them on your rule register. Otherwise, you won't get the levels of compliance you want. Your rules will become ineffective. And so we need to change the whole rulemaking system. Just because we've done it this way in the past does not mean it is the best way to do it in the future and moving forward. We've got to push ourselves. These people work for us. The system should be working for us, not dictating to us, the experts, what a bunch of ignorant people behind desks think is a good idea. We're going to be a bit militant about this.
But I think so. We're coming towards a bit of a historic, great big cluster of many directions. China's not letting stuff in. America doesn't want Chinese stuff in, and regulations are going nuts, and this and that and the other. It's a very, very interesting, as the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. Although I don't think they actually do say that, do they? I do believe that's a Western invention. But it's going to be an interesting couple of years, and it's nice that it's got timelines, a bit like, you know, trials for a president or former president. You know, we've got the 16th of September rushing up. We've got the 1st of September rushing up for this band, this, that, and the other. You know, it's all segmented up, and we'll be able to watch this, having, you know, crystal balled this out for at least 5 years now, and just see where it all lands. And
even individually, they could be seen as existential threats. When you combine them, you've got a perfect storm. And
yes.
The thing is, it's all being done for what? eVTOL flying taxis. Did you see that rescue helicopter crash in the USA just yesterday?
Yeah.
Now, that was a helicopter with a whole lot of fallback safety mechanisms. What happens when eVTOL flying taxis with no fallback safety mechanisms start doing this? And I can't fly a 250-gram drone over my own house, but these helicopters can fly over pubs in the UK. They can fly over apartment buildings in the USA, and people die. Yet we've got to regulate these toys to the extent that you can't even fly them anymore because somebody might die. It's never happened in the entire history of recreational multi-rotor drone flying, and manned aircraft are falling out of the sky every day, but we're going to over-regulate the toys. Why is that?
And what's crazy, Bruce, is an aircraft has all these certified components on it, right? So that nut and bolt has to be certified to go on that helicopter. Yet, like you say, how many failures, how much stuff just falls out of the sky, you know? And the CAA accepts that if it's manned aviation, the same for all national aviation authorities, they accept there's a certain level of risk with manned aviation that aircraft is going to fall out of the sky, and the people in it, people on the ground, may be killed. However, when it comes to unmanned aircraft, like you say, they have this zero tolerance for some godforsaken reason, which doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up in the way that they're thinking. They're double standards, and it can't continue.
Did you watch Ian from London's latest video, the short one, not the big long one? If you haven't, go and watch it. He summarizes things quite well in terms of the CAA's request for submissions and why he answers what he does. Really good, actually. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long. It's worth watching.
Yeah, he's
We'll get to that. And then I want to sort of bring this round to the idea of, so we've got that storm happening, and all the time in the background, I'm trying to get Captain Sensitive in here now. All the time in the back. So, for those of you that aren't aware, the UK suffered a big air traffic problem day before yesterday, was it? I think, and it was actually the flight planning system of the air traffic control system that fell down. And I know Richard Parker has spoken to us about the fact that a lot of things that he has to connect to with NATS demand an ISDN line here in 2023 because there's no other technology for it. So there's lots of bits of there where they have. And that is one of the problems with technology, isn't it? If you keep things limping along because you've always done it that way, and you have to have that system because you dare not try anything else, then you are just creating, as other technology gets ahead of you, you're creating loopholes. And the Iron newspaper suggested it was perhaps a hack. It looked like a perfect vector for a hack from GCH, former GCHQ person suggested that. And that, of course, is exactly the story that rolled out when Gatwick happened, and it came to me via both sides of the Atlantic. From
talk about Gatwick.
People.
Can't talk about Gatwick.
No. Well, I can talk about it. He can't talk about it. But I don't know. I don't know how we can say what's happened to censored Ian.
Sign language?
Because I believe a judge is involved. So, oh, look, the mask. Wow, that was dramatic. That was like it was planned or something.
Yeah, I could probably say a bit. I've been told I'm not allowed to share documents because obviously I've done these appeals with the ICO, and it's not been a good experience at all so far. And so obviously I wanted to capture that kind of blow by blow on Twitter so people could see what actually goes on when you're trying to deal with these things. So I spent a great deal of time putting through my appeals, and I only had days to get it done. And then the ICO has had weeks and weeks and weeks and has a legal team and all the resources. And then all they've basically done is just nitpick. A solicitor has literally just gone through like every sentence that Giles York made that I brought up, and is just trying to reinterpret the words in a different ways and say, yeah, but he could mean this. And no, he didn't mislead Julian Lewis MP by making him think there was no video, and it's blatantly obvious it was misled. Annoyingly, I tried to speak to that MP today, but his office blocked me having a chat with him, which is proper annoying, because it would have just been good to get his take as well, because if he says I was misled, it's just another little bit of argument. But it's obvious to anybody that watches the video what's being said. It's literally, it's too fast to film, blah 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 blah, and we've seen it with the video that's come out that all that was nonsense. So because I didn't really ever want to make an argument about whether there wasn't a Gatwick drone, because that's kind of irrelevant to my freedom of information request. I'm just saying I want these bits of the jigsaw provided. We're in a democracy. My questions are fairly straightforward and trivial. One of them was Giles York actually at Gatwick, because he presents his evidence as though it's a personal witness statement, and I'm absolutely convinced he wasn't there at all. And all that just it adds additional context, and it's not an unreasonable request. It doesn't work at Sussex Police anymore. There's no argument about knowing where a chief constable was at Christmas, whether he was off on leave or whether he was there. If he was there and part of the operation, that's a chief constable going above and beyond the duties of his job. So it would be a plus. You'd say, great, he's there, he's done something. So if he wasn't there, it's not like you can argue, oh, well, it's a negative, it's putting them into, this negative light for not being there, and we can't tell you about it. It's just being stubborn for stubborn's sake. And the funny thing is, I've been going through the evidence. I've noticed. So, like one of my questions is about how much did they pay to buy or rent Aeroscope? And they say, well, we can't even acknowledge that Aeroscope exists at the airport because national security will stop Sussex Police's ability to play all this bullshit. And yet, we know our friend who's been on this show, Richard Ryan, had asked, can you tell me all the drones that were there at the airport? He not only got that, I mean, the ICO fought on his behalf for that. So they told him all the drones. And they didn't just tell him what was there in 2018. They gave him a full itinerary up to date of every drone they have. So, and I'm like, wait a minute. These are equally as important pieces of kit in the police arsenal. If I'm asking about one piece of kit and being told I can't get an answer, and someone's asking about another piece of kit and can get an answer, that itself is evidence of a contradiction. You can't argue one is fair and the other is not. And the annoying thing is, I presented evidence on timelines, on. I even put the Daily Mail picture where the Daily Mail's got it there. This is Aeroscope. This is Sussex Police operating it. Here's a photo, and so it's in the public domain. And the ICO are literally arguing it is not in public domain. So they basically, because it's my word versus this legal team. So this legal team are saying stuff that actually genuinely isn't true. It isn't correct. They even referred at one. Well, no, I better not say at this point of going into too much detail with it. But so I wanted to put some of this on Twitter and show what was going on. And again, people can feedback and say, oh, actually, this or that. And there's people on Twitter, some that will have their own legal insights. But I got a bit annoyed actually because it was Friday. It was 8:30 p.m. This itself is bizarre. Have you ever heard of someone in the public sector working at 8:30 p.m., especially a solicitor and overtime? I think that'd be unheard of. So how come my freedom of information requests are raising such concern that they've got a solicitor working in a Friday evening to try and stop me? So they've said basically it was an all-out attack on me. I mean, even a bit of it was passive-aggressive, so this wound me up. They were trying to suggest I didn't even know the timeline, and I clearly did, and I know exactly. I know inside out, upside down, and backwards, and I've got other evidence that goes alongside it. And the annoying thing is they've got the timeline completely wrong. They're presenting at Gatwick as being an incident that lasted just 2 days, and we all know that's nonsense. And the evidence that's there from Sussex Police quite plainly tells you it was far longer than that. So yeah, it's all fun and games, and I got annoyed with this. So I had this hanging over me for the whole weekend. And I think they did that deliberately on Friday, because even in the UK, we have what's called a bank holiday. So Monday was a holiday as well. So those 3 days are 3 days that's been taken off me, where it's my right to reply. So really, my time's ticking away at the moment of being able to reply back. So I got a bit nervous. It didn't help, actually. I was down at a mate's yesterday having a meal and then a few drinks. So I got home and it was just hanging out. I've not been able to sleep properly for the previous 2 days, because when you got someone in the legal sector that's attacking you there, and I just want to get my points back there. I'm trying to get them clear in my head. And now I'm thinking, should I actually go into court and fight this rather than doing it over paper and asking, can we even do it remotely, or can I record video evidence from me and drone experts and present that, and then it gets reviewed? So I've been asking a few questions. But yeah, I replied back, but I wasn't in the best of moods, so I probably didn't. Replied back with a bit more, I'd say a bit more ranty and that than I should do. I'd prefer to be a bit more concise. But, and I said in that, I'm going to post about this on social media. I'm really not happy. You're just sniping, twisting words, putting words in my mouth that I haven't said, or views that I don't hold, this kind of thing. And they then cited a previous case where the judge decided that, no, you can't show bits of documents that are being discussed. So that it's kind of implying that I can't show the world the shit that I'm having fired at me. And the ICO specifically asked the judge to basically tell me not to do it. So, and I thought, well, I'll head it off. I said, well, no, I won't do it. I won't post anything on social media about it, because I thought it's better that than judge having to tell me to do something, because he might end up being the judge that even analyzes this case and is involved in making a decision. So I thought it's best not to knock anybody off. But someone on Twitter that's a legal commentator on the police, he didn't seem convinced that this was reasonable, because there were other people going through this same process and they're posting stuff about their freedom of information onto Twitter. So, I mean, you could say two wrongs don't make a right, but they're only really concerned because, I've got a big following on there and I'm followed by journalists and so on. And I made it quite clear I do talk to journalists on this, and I will continue to do so. And if we can get a documentary made or anything, every bit of this is going out, the entire tribunal process, and just seeing the crap you have to go through and the hurdles you have to jump through. So yeah, at this point,
the second series then.
Was that sorry?
Series 1 will be the incident. That'll be the incident and everything that happened on that night with Robert De Niro and all the other people playing the main air traffickers and things.
Yeah.
And then series 2 will be the tribunal and the court case.
Yeah, I mean it's all just bullshit really, and it's chipping away at me at this point, because it's like it's just been years and years and years of jumping over hurdles, and the ICO are the people that are there to make sure the freedom of information operates fairly. So I'm up against them. The trouble is, the ICO are presenting themselves as airspace and airport experts, and they're not. They have no knowledge of it at all. So they're making arguments that aren't true. So I've even asked them, well, who's your expert? How are you putting these points forward? To me, one of the timeline issue of 2 days, that started with Sussex Police. One of their senior officers that was involved at Gatwick tried to rewrite events, especially when Sussex Police were refusing to put the timeline out. So they had a bit more freedom to actually try and rewrite history and hope nobody noticed. So because I did ask, have Sussex Police been involved in writing this? Because to me that seems odd, because if Sussex Police want to be in this case, they're supposed to come with their legal team as their own party. So it would be the ICO, Sussex Police, me, and the ICO should then be trying to mediate between us. But it feels at the moment that the ICO are making this is the ICO's argument, and are just putting in words that Sussex Police has given them to say, which I think, it just seems odd to me. I don't know if they're allowed to do that or not, you see. And but I think if they are doing that, should at least be open and clear, so that I know who I'm essentially arguing against. So I'm asking.
Have you spoken to Richard?
I've mentioned stuff to him. I don't think he wants to get too involved in it. I mean, obviously, he'd be welcome to if he wanted to, but I don't think he really wants to get his hands dirty into that, to be honest. But I have had a word already with Philip Rouse. Philip's even said if this was heard in court, he would come over from Australia and be in the court with me. Although I'd like to avoid him having to do that if I can, and things, being remote. And I'd like to get, I know Brendan said he will do something. He's just a very busy man. But I'm hoping he put something in writing. But the nice thing is,
he can send his dog.
Yeah, I've had, he can bring a, yeah. I've had a submission from a professor of law at Kent Uni that's fully backed. He says it's public interest and supports my view and my case. I've had FPV UK, top on them, the only UK organisation that's had the balls that, stand by me and do me a really nice letter. I mean, they represent over 7,000 drone pilots. So it's nice that they're, again, saying there's public interest here. These should be answered. And, Oren at who used to be 3DR and Gwyn Partners, and now is a TikTok superstar making many products and so on. He's done me a really nice testimonial as well from his time, his experience.
I could forge a note from your mum.
Sorry?
I could forge a note from your mother.
So it's been a nice start. I've asked a national journalist if he'll do me a few lines and stuff. So I'm still at this point just trying to get put in evidence. I'll avoid getting too much to what was said, but I did put in the PwC data about the drone industry. I felt the reply was not just an attack on me, but also attack on the drone industry and sort of belittling. They even belittled Brendan, to be fair. So it was attack on people that are experts in the industry itself, and me. So yeah, at this point in time, it's been the lowest few days of the entire Gatwick thing because I thought, the instructions are when you go for this tribunal, is both parties are supposed to work together. So really, the ICO should be trying to work with me. We get to understand each other's views, and we come to something in the end that's a mutual agreement. Where it seems here that it's actually they just don't want to have any of my. By the fact they're saying they just want it to be dismissed, it applies to me like they don't even want it to be heard.
Wow.
So we'll have to see where where it goes. So all I can do and I keep doing is putting more and more evidence together. I've had to go. I've been around today again with just everything I've got, not just proving it once, not just proving it twice, but getting 3, 4, 5 examples of everything I'm arguing, because just the volume of that makes it harder. I put in the original video we've got of the Gatwick drone that came out. I put in the analysis that shows it's almost certainly a Sussex police drone, and I put in the evidence that shows the drone I'm claiming it to be was in their kit at that time. So I'm just going to have to continue on fighting all these points, but I've got essentially, what they're doing as well is they're trying to have it rolled into one single appeal instead of 3, because what they want to do is fire all their effort at it to get the whole thing kicked out in one go. I'm not going to argue that anyway, because it's a gamble either way, but it's also true that if I then win and come out on top, I've claimed all 3. So it's a bit more of a high stakes game, but I know what's there is correct, and I just hope that I get to say my piece, and the experts that I get involved get to say their piece. But I'm not happy that the whole arguments about whether there was or wasn't a Gatwick drone, because to me that's irrelevant. It's just, this is a democracy. We should be able to ask questions and we should be able to understand it. But what I'm trying to do is argue one point for public interest, to say something's of the public interest, is to show that there's evidence of potential wrongdoing. And there's definitely evidence of potential wrongdoing. When you've got a chief constable giving Parliament inaccurate information, saying there isn't video when there is, when we've got the DFT, what should we call it, civil servant, and he's saying on Twitter,
Yes.
he knows what really happened. That is a clear and undisputable sign of potential wrongdoing. They don't want that evidence heard. They're arguing it's irrelevant. I don't think it is irrelevant. I think it's one of the most relevant snippets of Gatwick information there has been.
Well, I don't understand. Why can't that guy get called in? Right, come. What do you mean by that? You know, why can't we all hear? Because then he's going to say, "Oh, look, I was only joking, and I was drunk, and I don't really know anything." Or, well, actually, this is what it was.
Yeah, I mean, with these kind of things, I can't call people into it. If you want to give evidence, it's your choice. And obviously, somebody that's done something they probably ought not to have done isn't going to get involved in this.
The judge could call on, they could. If he's issuing orders suppressing you from your free speech, surely he can order a witness to testify.
I really don't think he can with something of this nature. You know, if it was a criminal case and that, it's a different matter. But this is, you know, this is a tribunal.
This should be a criminal case, shouldn't it? I mean, only those who have something to hide have anything to fear from the scrutiny of public, you know, spotlight. So, and this is something that goes far deeper. It speaks to the whole way that the system is working or failing to work. You're just one case. Imagine how many other cases there are like yours that nobody knows about because they have been suppressing all this stuff. It speaks to major flaws in the whole system, and it needs to be addressed at a national level, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the ICO is going to look very good coming out of this. You know, if people are able to know what goes on in the process, because it shouldn't be this level of stupidity over the most trivial of questions being argued. You know, I could ask, was the sky blue on the day of a certain day at Gatwick, and I wouldn't be allowed to ask the question. You know, apparently the world, the sky would fall down if that was revealed.
But this is a key case for the drone industry worldwide. This has affected.
Can I say something though?
Go on.
This is with the utmost respect. Most of us in America don't give a shit. We don't even know what's going on. We're completely disconnected. We don't see how it impacts us. And it's not like,
but all the counter UAS systems that have been sold on the back of it. This has been their main go-to.
I'm not denying that, my man. I'm just saying, like, there's this, and I think to Bruce's point earlier, I think there's like maybe a cultural difference where, like, I think you're talking about, man, there's so many things in this country that are regulated by the people who have no idea what they're doing, and it's maybe. I mean, I'm commiserating with you as another Westerner to know that it doesn't just happen here in the United States, but there's this unfortunate disconnect with some of these nuances, and it's not just with Gatwick. It happens to be with like BVLOS regulations, with the CAA, not just in Australia, also things that happen. The entire European Union. America is we're in our own regulatory bubble, and I don't have the experience you folks do. We're dealing with lawmakers or even being on this earth. But this
it's called and sold.
Where it's important, I mean, Brendan will tell you it's himself that in the US, in the meetings he was having with the FAA, Gatwick dominated those for about a year.
Well, I guess I'm saying from us as an industry, from the non-regulatory perspective, us as patrons, us as hobbyists, us as people who care about the industry, we are very much disconnected from that idea.
But not from the effects of it.
Yeah, and to be frank, like I don't know, I have a different opinion about remote ID than several of my colleagues. Like, do I think it should exist? Yes. Do I think it's poorly implemented? Yes. Do I believe that it's some money grabbing play by certain companies? In my opinion, no. I think it's just been poorly executed, and which is why you can see from every single blue OEM who has certain confusion about how do we implement this for what customers and whatnot. The intent is there. And you're right, Gary. I think people have ran with it and created fear mongering, but we don't have insight as an industry, as advocates or even activists, what have you. Like we're not very well informed, and I think it just we're not very well informed. We don't know what's going on, and I think it's not. We really live in a world. Sorry, in a culture in the United States where I think there's a lot of distrust against regulators, regardless of your political view. Like there's just in general skepticism. And this idea of drones, the FAA is uniquely conservative, is my understanding. And I'm sure you could bring Patrick on and he could talk at length as to his own opinions as to, what the FAA does on a regulatory perspective. I can just tell you this, Americans, we're very disconnected. We're also raised, unfortunately, with this, and I should mention Ian and Bruce. I still do watch your videos as a hobbyist. You guys were instrumental in my, in my growth in the industry, and many others, Joshua Bardwell and others. But the days of folks being able to go and unfortunately fly drones wherever you want to fly, like they're numbered. And I think that many of us, and I recommend you bring Chad Capper on probably and talk with him about this, because the first time I met him in person, we went into very great detail about the demographics of the drone industry. In America, it overlaps with the motocross industry. It's a socioeconomic indicator. You have a lot of space, right? And generally, it's a lower cost of living in the places like the Midwest and the South. People have property. And it's one more thing to do on your property, right? And ultimately, that overlaps with a political perspective of, it's my property, I can do whatever I want. When in the United States, the government believes that anything above a blade of grass is their property. So we already have that friction point there, and we are a very sparsely populated nation in general. So you see this, the perspectives of the people who live in densely populated areas regarding FPV tend to be more for a regulatory constrained hobby versus those that don't. And it's probably, an analogy for other opinions and other political issues, but we're behind in the discussion, we're behind in the regulations and the maturity of those regulations than our European and even Australian and I'm sorry, pardon my ignorance is a term to the Commonwealth folks, right? Pardon me, you can tell I'm an ignorant American.
I think what's important for me with the freedom of information is because the freedom of information in the UK was brought out based on the fact that the US has it, and it's one of the best pieces of legislation we've had introduced in the UK. It's changed the political landscape, in that questions can be found out about misbehaviour by MPs, and it holds people to account. And there's pros and cons between our two countries. The freedom of information is still important in the US. I know, and I suspect Gary and Patrick have had dealings in some and helped get some information out. The good thing in the US is you can sue when information isn't being provided. Now, we can't do that in the UK. Our system's different. The good thing we have in the UK is you tend to get stuff when people are willing to cooperate. You get things back very quickly, so it can even be days. Where I know in the US, trying to get information back takes several years. But what they did in the UK, instead of you being able to sue them, is we have the ICO. So we have what's supposed to be an independent body that's supposed to facilitate getting information out, and that's where it's breaking down at the minute. But why this is an important battle in itself, it isn't just about Gatwick. It's the fact that this is a common tactic with police in general, that we have this just complete block of information coming out where the act isn't working at all. So the point with my case is, if I win, that in itself can set parts of a precedence where someone else in future trying to get information, they can cite Ian Hudson versus the Information Commissioner and bits of the actual case
That'd
itself.
Pretty cool.
So that it in itself, it then starts unlocking information for, to make life easier as it should be. So it's a worthwhile battle regardless. And if I can get some facts out along the way, then good. If I can't, well, at least I tried. I mean, this is the problem. People don't even try these days. You can't really moan about things and how hard they are if you've never put the effort in the first place. So all you can do is get out there, give it a go, give it a try, and
no one will.
And in the film, that'll be where you running up some steps and going at the end. That's how it'll work?
Or with the minigun.
We already know what the ending is, because unfortunately and sorry, Ian, but there is a point where you're going to fall out of a window of a
Yeah.
fourth-story building.
It's
that
when he's
you've
clinking the
just
glass on his
visited.
private jet. Clink,
And it's
boom.
private jet, and yeah,
But
you know,
don't
so-
underplay the importance of Gatwick, the whole thing about the drone, because here in New Zealand, they're citing that incident as justification for increasing regulation. So we need to make sure that this the myth of Gatwick is destroyed, because regulations are being built on the premise that there was a drone at Gatwick. We need to know either way, because if you build your regulations on a myth, the regulations are not going to be that flash.
And the UK was about to. I've even forgotten it. It's that long ago. I've completely forgotten what the UK was going to roll out. But it was a lot more permissive stuff. Was just going to happen, and it stopped it. It stopped that permissive stuff. Killed it dead. And it also brought us. What are the flight? Is it FRZs? Flight restriction zones. They suddenly got rushed in, and it's also you do need to join the dots with what company exactly was at Gatwick. Which company exactly? Well, they've gone bust. It was aircraft, but they flew the Gatwick exec over to America and his family, gave him a holiday. Here's our UTM. Here's our counter UAS solutions. All of that does need to be unpacked, because it has had an important impact on the industry, both for private flyers and commercial flyers. It's made a difference. What about buttered sausage? What about butters? Now, squeeze. Now, Sean's got my attention.
We're getting
Now
into
I
the
don't
realms of
know.
philosophy.
Is this a cultural thing that they have in America? Buttered sausage, or does he mean battered sausage in Scotland? I mean, now I'm confused.
I was going to say one thing, Gary. There is at
Yeah.
least one positive this week. We had the air traffic control systems go down, and no one thought, let's blame a drone. You know, that in itself was a minor miracle.
I don't think you can blame a drone when it's more than one place. That's the
It's the
problem.
entire country. Well,
yes,
that's what
yes.
I wrote. That's what
And
I wrote.
they
It
probably
was
thought,
the
we
entire
did not blame a
country.
drone. We don't want that Ian guy on our back again.
Yeah. But it just shows us that how fallible those systems are, and it could easily be. And the skies falling in and all that sort of thing. It could easily have been the hack. As I've said before, it could be, look at your fridge, I've just switched the lights off, and that would terrify people in the tower. Or I've just spewed a load of chocolate out the vending machine. That would terrify the security people, and they would shut down operations because they wouldn't know what was going on. So it wouldn't take the great big threats that people would perceive in the hack world to stop air traffic working. It really wouldn't. So and personally, I'm just keen to know what all this Gatwick fuss. I'm just keen to know the truth of it. And Ian is the world's subject matter expert on this, and you can even put it on your LinkedIn profile.
By the way, they're here to arrest me.
Sorry, say again.
So they're here to arrest me.
There it is. Oh yeah, very good, very good. There must be a law about battering your sausage for a rev. Yes, exactly. And I've seen that film. But anyway, moving on quickly. 1 hour and 2 minutes. What else have we got to talk about, gentlemen? Oh, auditors. Oh, auditors. We have auditors all around the world, and that's
They're
a big
great.
part of the problem.
I love those channels. So entertaining. So entertaining. And it's such a innovative use of drones. Really good.
I don't know. I just don't see the appeal with those channels. And the annoying thing is, I keep getting them popping up on Facebook, and I even blocked the channel on. You can do Facebook saying I don't want to see this again, and the bloody thing was still popping up. So, so these guys, I don't know where they're making the money from, but there's clearly some ad revenue out of this where they feel it's worthwhile doing. Because
that guy, who's the guy with the bike? I forget his name, but he's shown his earnings, and they're really good. He makes a lot of money out of that channel. And interesting enough, when I did a video holding the Meto account and in our local council, I got a heap of the same people commenting on my video saying, "Good on you, good audit." I'm thinking, I didn't audit. I just asserted my rights, in a very public way. So there is a huge groundswell of people. I think all those people that are disillusioned by the way the world's going get behind these auditors and say, "You'll sort them out." It's like it's an empathy with them, I think, and fair enough. If they feel that way.
What do you mean by
auditors?
What are the auditors for the rest of us who are not?
It's
English?
Why don't we audit the auditors?
Like, what is an auditor? I'm curious.
I'll give you my explanation of what I think it is, and then people can correct me. But it's basically you've got these people going round, so they're taking the drone, and then I mean they even went to Metis. So Metis is the company that did the counter drone at Gatwick. So they went outside their offices and started flying a drone around, and then you get the security coming out saying we're going to arrest you flying, and they're going no, you can't. So what they basically do is they go and antagonize businesses and they go and antagonize the police. So they'll go outside a police station, start flying the drone, and they wait. I think, really what a lot of them are after is the police to come along and arrest them. And then they'll just take a legal case out against the police for, this arrest that they've done wasn't legal in the first place. Wow. So basically they have like a YouTube channel recording all this. So you've got people that are literally sat there tuned into YouTube, just watching a guy being a dick with an official trying to piss him off, and that's it. But for some reason, there's just loads and loads and loads of views at this. So, but the trouble is, I do genuinely think this is given an excuse for tougher, legislation and regulation. So there'll be people within authorities that are absolutely loving this because it's. It's a license to react.
But it's not about the drone. It's about the authority. And that's the fun thing with it. It's all about there's a number of videos that are roaming around of police doing stuff. There's quite an amusing one with the police turn up to kick this guy's door in. And he says he's not there. They tried to arrest him and they tried to get in and he's going, right, come on then, fellas. And he's talking to them through the Ring doorbell and he's basically giving them a bunch of abuse. And he's going, come on, put your back in it. And it's all about this anti-authority thing. But drones have become a real easy way for them to get. They found that drones are a real quick way to piss people off. That's what they found, isn't it? Fly a drone round. We don't like that.
Yeah, the best audit channel is actually the best one is Auditing Britain, and he doesn't use a drone, but he's got the best, most entertaining audit channel in the UK.
I should just add,
I can't believe Bobby's not come across this style of YouTube styling.
So
be thankful you haven't, Bobby. It's not worth seeing.
Well, I mean, in America, I think we have, whatever personal rights activists, things like that. That's what I assume, but it's not drone related. Usually, there's this whole sovereign citizen movement that's in the United States. There's a bunch of those types of things that are happening right now, but usually
the drone's just a tool to look. Let's see what they've actually got in the yard of their business. The drone is the tool to do that. Let's go to BMW. Oh, I saw one in McLaren, I think. Let's go to McLaren and look over the wall at the factory and see what's really there, because I can do that.
Because most people mistakenly believe they have a right to privacy and that you can't fly a drone here. And the auditors play it off as, we're educating police and the public about what it's legal to do with the drone, when really they're just poking them with a stick and trying to get a reaction.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it is going to have the regulatory reaction. Someone's asked a question in the chat, was just saying, in the UK, if we have like a mirror of the First Amendment and freedom of the press and that, and no, we don't. So there is no right to free speech. If you say something, you are responsible and liable for it.
Yeah, which is quite a good idea in some regards.
And you don't want to cause harassment or distress.
Yeah. The only unfortunate thing here is the only way that those laws help you, or if you're just very rich, it really just keeps everyone that's poor quiet. And anyone that's rich can still say what they are because they can just pay the money when it comes around to it. But it's if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you could be paying hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds.
Well,
I see other Ian's made a bit of a technical faux pas this evening in your office. Can anyone else spot the technical faux pas? You've made a really big mistake this evening. Yeah, you've put your jacket over the chair.
Oh, right, yeah.
We can't see the logo, mate.
Maybe he's shilling a jacket now.
He's lost his sponsorship.
You haven't paid your sponsorships.
If you want to see a review of that jacket, just go to his channel. Link in the description.
That chair used to be the biggest inner I've ever had, and it wasn't even FPV related.
You need to put some motors on it.
The way things are going, I'll be leaving the FPV world soon anyway, the way the content's dying. Although it doesn't help that
Oh, I don't know. We've had a bit of a big month on the YouTube channel this month. We got to $1.14 of earnings.
What does it make our share, Gary?
Big month. Big month. Yeah, big month. Yeah. We have a party and everything.
It's an interesting time. There's loads of new like small quads coming out at the moment. Funny enough, the review space is very busy. Like I saw, I haven't watched your video yet on the jumper, Bruce, because I've got one, and I don't want to sully
that's the
my
way I
own
do it too.
thing.
I don't watch
your-
other people's videos.
Yeah, I try not to. If I've got one, I don't want to. I had watched a few reviews before I knew I was getting one, but I now don't want to do anything until I've done it. I believe you broke it, I heard on the grapevine. That's what I've heard. But yeah,
that's your job with the USB.
Lots
You know
of
that.
No,
very
mine was
That's a
broken out of the box. I had to fix 2 faults before I could use it.
Well, I haven't even turned this on yet, so you might not be alone. So, there are lots of small quads. Everything right now is about this. The industry is about to be on the consumer space. 03 in as small as possible. Everything is about this. I think there's.
How is that, Ian? I was considering getting. Is that the Pico? I was considering getting
It's
one
not
myself.
great. The Pico isn't great. It's okay, but it's got a bucket load of issues in the sense of I've had to. Okay, to be unfair, it's typical beta FPV. Like they've already replaced the flight controller. There's a version 2 which I don't have on this because it was burning ESCs. It for some reason has a lot of jello issues compared to some of the others. There is a new one from Flywoo coming. I'll have that in a week or so. And there's another one I can't talk about because it's under NDA, but again, similar size. I'll probably have a better view in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Can I ask your professional opinion?
Yeah.
Anything as good as the Avata. If I have an Avata,
No.
I like it.
No. The Avata wipes the floor with all of them. Category. Even as good as you can get, the image quality on the Avata will wipe the floor. Same camera setup, but it's just the stability just works better on the Avata.
Okay.
Yeah. If you were out and out filming professionally, just buy an Avata.
Okay.
It's that simple. But they are real fun, and they are really pushing right now. And look, this is a completely naked 03, so it's completely torn down. You know, we've removed as much of the metalwork as we can to get the weight down. Halves the weight of the air unit by doing that. 50% weight saving, which is important on this size of aircraft. So we're looking at a way to go further. There is still some metalwork left on the boards. It's this like an outer metal shielding. And
peel all those little copper traces off. That'll save a bit of weight.
take the copper traces off. And where I did do a test on an air
Drill
unit
lots of holes.
yesterday to try and remove one. This isn't an 03. This is an old DJI one, and I moved 5 components, unfortunately, in the process of doing it. So it's a no-go that way. It's not easy to remove a big metal can. So back on form, yeah. So that's now dead. But yeah, FPV space is very much of that. Drones, I've been really tempted on the Mavic Air 3, but I don't really. Camera drones, I think, are done. I think I finally accepted I'm done on camera drones largely now.
Because they're not fun to fly, or just
it's just and I think there's just nothing exciting now. I've got a Mavic 2 Pro, which was the last camera drone I bought. And whilst it's got some issues, the sensor bin in, the way the image, it's not the best. It's not the worst. It's good enough for what I need from it if I want to use that size of quad. And I think the problem is there's been nothing since that has made me go, wow. And I remember, I reviewed the Mavic 3, 4/3 sensor, fantastic. But it's not that much better than the Mavic 2 Pro in general use. It's not enough to warrant. You know, I remember, and look, Bobby's been around a long time. So I remember going from the Phantom 3 to the Phantom 4. Same camera, but they redid all the lenses. And it was like a noticeable difference in how it could resolve the image quality on the same sensor. Then we moved to 1 inch, and it was like, this is amazing. The 1 inch jump was huge. And then everything after that has just been.
I have to say, for the Mavic 3 Pro, from commercial operators using it, it's a really nice bit of kit. And I've done an edit for somebody recently, And it was an absolute joy to have the video, because as well, the filming was in pitch black. There was literally one large LED light and a few smaller, so it was about the most demanding. And even worse, the LED light was beaming out red, which is one of the poorer colors to see at night. And the great thing about it was the bit rate. There was equivalent to what you'd be getting out of an S series Lumix, and it's in H.265 rather than H.264, so you've got a comparatively better image quality. So I was able to get the video, and then I transcoded it to another format that's more editing friendly. But I was able to do no end of effects and tweaking, because I had to push the video a bit because it was dark. When you bring up, the blacks in the image, especially on smaller sensors, it falls apart normally really quickly. And here, it kept together, so I was able to put neat denoiser on it and all these effects. And the video is beautiful at the end. So
it's a great tool.
I was really impressed by it. So I think, for a commercial operator, if you don't want to go all, because a lot of people just don't want something the size of an Inspire, even if they could afford it. Then that drone just ticked the boxes. I do think that the zoom, the zoom's pointless at night because that just even has more noise. Because and whenever you're on a zoom, you're looking at a slower aperture. But other than that, it was really good. And if you're doing daytime stuff or if you're news report and that, there's just lots of boxes it ticks. So, but you have got a good point on price. But having said that, if you shop around and I don't know what drone dealers like with this, but if you go to the big boys, the camera dealers, your Wexes of the world of that, and you keep ringing up enough and going, I'll definitely buy it, will you knock me some off? You would be surprised how much they've knocked off that, some serious money. So I know someone who's got one and they got a really, really, really good price. So actually, if you buy 4 Reapers, that seems expensive, but there is flexibility there.
They're cannibalizing their own market though, because like Ian was saying, there's a huge leap because I think we also were comparing it to other drones and other OEMs. On the consumer side, they really, like, I'll use the Apple analogy. You have LG and Google, with the Pixel, these, Samsung, these other companies holding Apple's feet to the fire, right? DJI doesn't have that. In fact, a friend of mine, he has the Air 2S, and he's had it since it came out. And he actually worked with me in counter UAS. He's like, man, this Air 3 looks pretty cool. Is it worth getting? And I actually suggested him look at some videos, and he called me. He's like, man, I'm not compelled to buy it. I don't see anything that there's, and again, I think it's because we're, as consumers, it's different than from a prosumer perspective. If you want to pay for the Mavic 3 Cinema, great. You want to do the Inspire 3, for example, the SSD in there, remarkable. I think that DJI has such a demonstrable lead, unfortunately, that they can, like the P4 you mentioned, Ian, it's a great example. That P4 Pro was around for a long time. Yeah. And they didn't have to upgrade it. They didn't have to change it. In fact, they didn't do anything until this Mavic 3 that basically came out and replaced it.
And they still haven't replaced it because there is not another drone that has a global mechanical shutter that they sell.
And people are paying for those P4s.
The Enterprise have that? The Mavic 3 Enterprise doesn't have a global shutter?
Do you know what? That is a very good question. I don't know.
I'm almost
Louis in the comments.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I do remember speaking.
The little auto that I've got, it does everything for multi-rotor flying. It does everything I need it to do, and I don't need anything else. The only reason I'll get another thing is because I crash it. That's my upgrade experience, and then I'd look about. But I'll probably even still just get another one, even though they've stopped making them. I think
that's the problem, isn't it? That we've reached peak drone. There's no compelling reason to buy a new one. I mentioned this in the review of my Jumper T20 transmitter. Everybody's got a transmitter. Everybody's got several transmitters. There's not a lot of growth in the hobby because of all the reasons we've discussed. So what happens to the radio manufacturers when everybody's bought all the radios they need? How do they sell anything? How do they make any money? It's an existential crisis. That's why we've seen these ever smaller, ever cheaper radios coming out of Radio Master and Jumper, because they realize that if they make them smaller and cheaper, then the people will buy them whether they want them or not, because they just got one. So there's a dead-end road if they're not careful. They run themselves. It's a race to the bottom, and when they reach the bottom, there's nowhere else to go. Goodbye. We lose manufacturers.
I mean, for me, I've been.
I think Ian's got some news just in.
Yeah,
looking at
no,
his face.
I missed that. It did. I have completely missed. They slammed. I missed. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to that launch because I just thought, oh, it's an enterprise version of the Mavic 3. They'll shove a light on top of it and a speaker and say, hey, there you go, you can crack on. Yeah, mechanical shutters. So it's the Phantom 4 Pro and the Mavic 3 Enterprise. Wow. Missed that one.
I've got one gripe with the DJI stuff, and that's the scandalous price of the ProRes license to have it with it. You know, when you consider you buy the Lumix S series S5 II, and you can get the S5 2X with the built-in ProRes. It's only a couple of £100 more. Now, if a full mirrorless camera is only charging a couple of £100 more, I don't see how a drone's charging you several £100 more.
Yeah, the thing we don't know is because this is red, unfortunately, and what we don't know is what DJI are being charged. It's never been clear if DJI are making that very large markup, or are they being stitched up by red on
I
this?
find it hard to think it would be, because why would you charge Panasonic a really trivial amount and then sting DJI with a really significant amount? It doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up.
Panasonic is a much bigger company.
Yeah.
Oh no, I realise that, but it still, to me, puzzles me that it'd be so expensive. You know, when commercial operators, is it worth the extra? Well, for me, I don't think it is. You know, unless you're doing something and it's going in a movie, but even then movies have been there for years not using codecs that are as high as that anyway. So and seeing how well it holds up with the H.265, I'm personally, I would never pay the extra money as it is now. You know, £400 more up to that, you can kind of go, well, you know, I'll suck it up. But when you're talking a lot more than that, it's how do you justify it? I'm also not particularly keen on products that have built-in SSDs, because SSDs can fail. And I like to have memory that swaps. I mean, if I'm recording with my ground camera, here we go. So these are SSDs, and these will actually keep me going for, one of these will keep me going for an entire shoot, but I will deliberately check it out and change cards because these heat up when they're in use and so on. And I want to make sure if a card ever fails of that, I'm never losing the whole shoot. Especially if you're doing a paid job on that, you've got a lot of liability there if you can't produce the video. And what we see, even a lot of cameras still these days haven't got backup built in, i.e. writing to two cards. There's more than there used to be, but there's still ones that don't. See, like with Sigma here, I haven't got a backup on it. And with drones, we're not having backups on it. So there are ways you can, straight away there's improvements of.
There's an improvement, to be made to make it worthwhile. Yes, for a professional. Yeah, I see that. Well, they are best hop on the plane to China and tell them off access, talking about the BS module. It's a great name. They're kind of the group that bought that module out are kind of actually the guys that put a lot of thought into RID before it became RID, and they're really nice people. So we had them on a few weeks ago to explain that when the BS module was launched. Luca, that's it. And yeah, no, they're good to people. Now look, 121. What else can we talk about before we go? Going once.
I saw, the trouble is I don't know much about it because I didn't pay too much attention, but Brendan had done a tweet today about an IPO for a drone company. Did you see that?
Which was the drone company?
Can't remember. He tweeted a couple of hours ago, but I just thought maybe there's some news there that's worth digging out of that. I don't know. I didn't pay enough attention to.
Is this the Brendan?
It's Parazero.
Yes.
It's the company.
Oh, Parazero.
Parazero.
The parachute company.
Oh, Parazero. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one because
when did they invent those?
They had loads of failures, didn't they, in the early days? I know of loads and now it will come down and oh no, it won't.
There's some brilliantly hilarious videos on YouTube. I watched parachute videos where they're going, I'm turning my drone off now to engage the parachute. And the drone is like a brick, and then the parachute comes out. It's a laugh all the way down.
Like Like that guy that jumped off the Eiffel Tower at the turn of the last century.
That's right. Yes. Oh, part of Delta drone. Yes. The parachute things are quite interesting because it's the imposed surface wind speed limits that you have. People don't quite
DJI has one
realize
on the delivery drone.
they do. It looks quite small, doesn't it? Doesn't look like much of a.
It
I
looks
think it's
small,
not to
but
stop people getting killed, just to minimize the injuries.
Yes.
it's big. It's big. I think there's a video I saw actually on Instagram. There's a gentleman who sits in like the main cargo bay and tries to fly.
Oh
It's
no,
like-
the drone's huge. Oh, the drone's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
It's interesting they
It's,
took so long to get into that. But when they came in, they've come in swinging.
Oh, they've yeah, and they've walloped. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful thing.
There's no point in coming in earlier though, because the regulation they have no one to sell it to, because no regulation allows it. So they've left it at the right time. You know, now the regulation is starting to
It
open
also
up.
didn't cost a lot to make too, because they just modified an existing platform.
Yeah. And it's as I said in what I wrote about it, it's the IBM thing, isn't it? Nobody got fired for buying IBM. NGOs and people all around the world have used their Mavic Minis and all their other DJI equipment, so they're at least slightly trained in the ecosystem, and they'll understand it. They understand the words letters DJI. I think it's brilliant, and I think the main reason I think it's brilliant is it'll knock a lot of the bullshit out that's out there from loads of companies that are trying to sell people gear all around the world that's just not fit for purpose. Never was, but they'll come and have a hotel stay on the back of it. Thank you very much. So I'm
How do you
glad
think Google
get
will
rid of that
respond?
lot.
How will
Get
Google
rid of them.
respond to this?
How will Google respond? Well, they're not in. Google and Amazon are not in the drone delivery business.
No.
They're in the data gathering business from the sky.
Something to mention, those I'll push back a bit. The Google aircraft can fly farther, right?
Yes.
And it's a completely different, weight class of aircraft. It's frangible. I mean, if that thing falls on a car, the Google aircraft, it will not cause as much damage as if the fly car. Like, there's so many.
But if it falls on the power lines,
yeah, no, true. Power lines are power lines. I think that it reduces the entry for people to want to get into the drone delivery space and maybe compete, because of, to get there would have cost you many millions of dollars. Now it costs what, 17 grand to have this platform that can do. And then if you're not flying beyond visual line of sight, which not everybody is, you can just go ahead and have a spotter and binoculars and do what you need to do. I think you're going to see a lot of smaller delivery folks pop up, like these smaller businesses, the way you saw like Deliveroo. I know you guys have that in the UK, like a food delivery business. You'll see that type of thing. And so I'm actually a huge fan of Mana. And they've done.
Bobby can use them.
Bobby
will be able to use them.
He could, but I don't. First of all, Bobby's aircraft is actually extremely robust, and for him, there's this idea of safety, and for him, it's like, listen, I'm making money doing this right now, is what I imagine, and I don't think he needs to change what he's doing. But for say in a company that has less regulatory oversight as the UK, say Latin America, certain parts of Southeast Asia, you can do a drone delivery business. I mean, someone in Thailand right now, it's a great idea. Buy a bunch of these, go to the beach, deliver meals to people, etc. Like there's ways to make money doing this. I don't know if they're going to have the same type of success as the Wings, the Amazons. The one thing about Wing that I think people forget is that it's still a moonshot program from Google. And as much as they have a lot of, you might have seen their latest announcement with Walmart. I don't think they're getting paid for that type of opportunity. It's
I think they're making money out of it. They're not getting paid for any of the stuff. Like consumers are getting it all for free. And
the delivery cost is very, very high, from my understanding. And at some point, it has to be brought down. When will that happen? But Google, we know of many amazing, truly world-changing projects that, again, I'm not trying to undercut Wing, what they've done is remarkable. Google has just this scope where they fund these projects, and if they don't reach certain milestones by a certain time, they just pull the plug. And so Wing has come out of the moonshot program. It hopefully stands on its own legs and it becomes a real thing. But Amazon is a e-commerce.
No, that's not even. No, don't even. Rubbish.
So the people, I don't think give Amazon enough credit. I mean, the Mark 27 is the Mark 27, in that they made 27 different revisions of that type of aircraft, and it's this idea of I give Skydio guff for being like, oh, you've raised all this money, you spent all this money, and this is what we get. And I have to concede, nobody's done it just as good so far. And I look at the S2 and I look at the product, has great fit and finish. No one's done it just so far, so we shouldn't discount it just yet. And I look at Amazon as one of the folks. I mean, man, the things I've learned about the Amazon aircraft through people who've worked on it and people who were vendors, it is an engineering marvel. I mean, it is a Part 15 aircraft. They built it as a plane. It's a 6-degree freedom aircraft. It has incredible capabilities. Is it over-engineered like crazy? Absolutely. Did they spend a obscene amount of money? Probably. And has DJI offered something for us that probably gets the job done at a fraction of the cost? Certainly. But I think it's important for us to look at and cheer on the people who are doing really good work. I often
I'm afraid I can't. Wing I like. I can't get over the way the Amazon woman lied at Farnborough in 2010. Sorry, that's it. They lost all credibility. And I was stood next to somebody who worked at the CAA at the time, and now he's at a UTM. And we were both stood there shaking our heads. They marched in and said, "We're Amazon. We're going to do it like this." And we said, "No, you're not." Sorry, you're not. You're not going to own lower airspace. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. So they started on the wrong foot, and they've kept moving in that direction. I'm afraid I'm not an Amazon fan at all. I think they're a net harm to the industry. Wing, they're doing it a little bit better, and but DJI, this first one is the first one. But if it's successful, version 2 will be twice the size, and it will match the wing specs. I mean, 20 meters a second for a multi-rotor that's knocking on 40 knots.
It's quick.
They'll if it's successful, they'll quickly get there. And I suppose it mirrors what happened in the early industry when it was just trying to get a camera to fly, and then people say now every estate agent in the world and every farmer and every other this and every other that will be using them. But until that first part of the industry is only beginning to work, whereas DJI brings us reliable machines where the surveyor and the estate agent and the whatever can just go and do the job, and they'll get it done. Whereas the early days you couldn't, and they've bought in a product which is going to do the same. You could have muddled around with a cobbled together delivery drone until now, but they've landed a thing now that this will do it. This will do what it says on the tin. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's great.
I think so. There's few restrictions to this. My understanding is that it doesn't have a software development kit currently. It doesn't have SDK support. That might be a complete, deal breaker for certain people. How the winch secures the package matters in that you're going to start seeing more restrictions around the winch needing to have like a secondary lock, so that in case of some sort of failure, the package and the drone can never really separate. Especially, like, God forbid you're flying and the package detaches from the drone. Like, there needs to be, there's a lot of, I think, security mechanically, and then some software redundancy around that. And ultimately, the DJI aircraft is huge. It weighs more than 55 pounds. So that's the immediate impediment of you're going to see here in the United States. But it's a marvel. I think it's important for us to be inspired by what they do and move towards, working with different vendors. I love, I sing Philip's praises often with CubePilot and what he's done. The industry owes a lot. I think there's many people in the space that are making phenomenal hardware. I've talked about Doodle Labs, Modal AI, many other people that are making components that I think that as platform OEMs need to identify and build like a strong relationship with, so that those companies can then scale and reduce the costs for everybody. And this is, there's, we could go blue in the face about how the change to the NDAA, unfortunately cut the legs off of the HearLink, which is objectively probably one of the best GCSs for the price for the enterprise market. But you can't use it in the United States for federal applications, right? It can't get on the blue list. We need to invest in companies like as a community, so that they can reduce their prices to make the stuff more accessible. It has to be over the long term. It's and it's hard, I think, it's for us to realize that, because we are, quote unquote, voting with our dollar in this case, where we spend money. The value-added resellers, this is not a knock against Skydio, but the value-added resellers who are very upset about Skydio's doing, that are, causing these DJI, because if you're not aware, DJI offers the largest margins to VARs by a huge margin, like Skydio's is in the single digits. DJI's is, plus 30. Okay. So if you can imagine, if you're a value-added reseller, who do you have incentive to sell more product? DJI. And we as an industry actually have actually a way to leverage, I believe, the actors in the space by simply choosing to buy or not buy their product.
I think China's just about to give us that opportunity. Thanks, China.
in some ways, absolutely. I also think that there's like a huge disconnect between like the state and the federal policy, and again, it's important for us to like as all the blue companies, the Western companies, most of us, with the exception of a handful, are using the same software stack. One, either PX4 or ArduPilot. We're using some form of flight controller, one of the 5 different radio links, one of the 4 or 5 different GCS manufacturers, the handful of payloads. There's ways for us to really, I think, navigate this in a better way versus this crab in a bucket mentality that, oh my God, we all have to own all of this. It's very frustrating. Sorry to complain. I know it's later for you guys as well, but it's been.
But I think from multiple angles, and I think we'll end it on that because I see my internet's getting dodgy. From many angles, the industry is death of 1,000 cuts. Can't think of analogies. And from this, that way, the other, and we're not working together enough, and we're not all singing from the same song sheet or as much as we should. And it is still a pretty small community. We've got people from all over the world in this call now. There's people from all over the world in the chat. It's not, in some ways, it's not that big of an industry. But everybody kind of knows everybody, and we should take advantage of that on an international scale.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the thought, by the way.
No.
Ever in Utah, come visit. We'll go skiing. We'll fly drones. We'll visit Teal Drones. We'll visit Fordham Technology. We'll visit all the folks here. You can see a drone up delivery. You can see a zipline delivery happening out here. We're doing a lot of cool stuff.
Now that's a cool company. That's a cool delivery company. I give them a lot of time a day for them. But then I'm going to go down that road, and I don't want to do that. We'll stop that. I know Ian's going to go. I know we're going to go. Jim, you, wherever you are in the world. Oh, he went quick.
Quite literally, didn't he?
Bye.
And God, I'm out of here.
It was Ian. It was something Ian said. I'm sure it was. And Ian, you need to put your postal address for all the STM32s that people are going to send you.
I do. We're going to need to be making there. We're going to, if it all goes the way, if I will live or die by those words Sunday night, because if nothing happens in this, everyone's going to call me an idiot.
They called you
we can
now.
do that.
I'm sorry
we can do that.
It's but yeah, we'll have to see. Interesting times. But yeah,
battered sausage squishy, not buttered. It's battered.
Yeah, send your STM32. We might have to start making flight controllers again. The great thing is we can do it if we need to. There is a way.
I've got my Vero board ready and my BC109 transistors.
I would love to do one, Bruce, a Vero board FC. It would be horrific, but it would be worth it doing
with some ECL 89 valves.
Yeah.
Valve one would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It would be fantastic. I'm just looking for my.
I got to go and move the 3D printer that arrived today. I had a 3D printer delivered today, literally the size of a mini. So I need to go and move it because my wife is going, what are you going to do with this box? And I'm going, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I can fit it into the garage at the moment. So I need to find someone.
They need to send me one. I'm having a lot of fun playing.
If I sent you a 3D printer, would it arrive?
No.
Somewhere. Genuinely, I need to lose some stuff. I can actually send you one, but the question is, will it arrive?
Oh, it'd be worth a risk.
And how much
the
would you pay
interesting thing is, why the sudden? Now he's gone. We're going to keep going, and he's going to think that. Well, not for much longer. But why is the sudden huge explosion in 3D printing reviews everywhere?
I've always done a little bit, but I was always
but it's not just you.
with the content. Now, Bamboo have reignited the industry. That's probably the right term to use. So the industry was bobbing along with like Creality doing their stuff, Prusa doing their stuff, and then we hit COVID and everything stopped. And Prusa announced a long time ago the XL, the Mark IV, and they didn't deliver, and that left an ear gap. And then everything was a bit stagnant, and then Bamboo dropped in, and Bamboo dropped in again, very DJI like, swinging a very good product out the door that just works. Yes, it's Chinese. Yes, there are some concerns about some of the data handling in the sense of the prints have to go through their cloud, but they don't have to. But that is a standard setup. Now, but Bamboo, I think, have reignited the industry, and everyone has suddenly gone, ooh. What is interesting, though, is how cheap some of these printers are. And I don't mean the Bamboo stuff. I'm talking the 199.
That's exactly what I'm looking to buy myself. The Creality V3749 Pro ESE or whatever it is. The crazy. That's exactly because my $79 printer has served me very, very well. But yeah, I mean, $200. I think it could almost.
There's a lot of stuff $200 to $300. Now they all work, but the difference is how well they work out the box. That's the really easiest term to use. The great thing with the Bamboo is it just works, and genuinely, you know. And I had a bit of an argument with a guy saying I'm helping the CCP. It's quite funny actually because I get the same arguments that you got with DJI. Now you're getting it with Bamboo, and it's like no, I've been finding these arguments for years, mate. Right, here we go. Let's have an argument. And it's interesting. You know, they have definitely delivered a product that has completely shook the industry up. Completely. But also, resin printers have taken a massive jump forward. There's one I'm waiting to hear from because they asked if I'd be interested, and I don't do a lot of resin printing, but this thing is it's 8K, which is the resolution, and the resolution on resin now is just incredible. Resin has now got to the point of being as good as it gets. I think FDM is very much there now. The problem is where FDM goes from here. We get bigger. What I've had today is very big. I've had a Q.
Well, how big are you allowed to tell us how big it is? Or
yeah. No, it's not under NDA. It's the Q. Let me just check. Let me just make sure I get the name. No, it's not QAD. Oh, wait there. I got a picture of the box on my phone, so I'll see the name on the side. I've actually, off the top of my head, I've forgotten which one it is. It is the QID X Max 3.
That's a name that rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the Max 3, and to give you an idea of the build volume, because if you think the Prusa is 250 by 250 by 250, and the Max 3 is 325 by 325 by 315, so you're talking,
as they call it,
a foot build volume.
And it's the size of a mini.
It's the box.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm a bit disappointed now.
The printer is big, but this is probably. I've already sort of said to myself, this is probably the last review. It's not. There is one other printer I would like to review that I know about that I can't talk about. But other than that, this will be it. I'm not a 3D printing review channel, but here's what is interesting. The 3D printing content has outperformed the FPV content by a country mile consistently over the last 6 months. From a YouTube point of view,
many more users, isn't there? There's many more users.
Much bigger. And it's not about the money, but it's just an interesting observation when I look at the size of if I stopped flying tomorrow, I would spin the channel to 3D printing. Do you know what I mean? That would absolutely happen. If, let's say, the rules stayed it so you could no longer fly drones in the UK, I would absolutely. And I've been 3D printing since 2014. I've been doing it a long time, but I just never really put the content out about it. It's like Bruce will know this. There's lots of stuff you do, but you don't talk about it that much on the channel. You know,
usually in the bedroom.
the bedroom, Bruce, but
never print ABS in the bedroom. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, and the sad fact is not as YouTube, but YouTube punishes you for doing stuff outside of your wheelhouse. You do something that isn't what your channel is designed for. It actually, just don't call it.
Designed a channel. Designed for? What does that mean?
You're sorry.
Designed for? What do you mean designed for? What do you design your channel for?
What you've been making. If you go outside your wheelhouse, YouTube punishes you dramatically. But yeah, I think it's getting harder. Drones are getting more difficult. It's harder and harder to stay relevant.
It must be because I picked up on that whatever that Creality $199 thing is, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So I've watched a couple of reviews. So now it is all my feed consists of is 3D printers, and I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed at the choice out there. And
who would be the safest to ship something to you by?
Carrier pigeons, several carrier pigeons.
Trebuchet.
The swifts and swallows are coming back. Oh no, what's Ian getting out the box now? Is he declaring a new helmet, making a new helmet or a new disguise?
No, as I say, in a minute, I'm getting something ready to go off that I sold on eBay, because the good thing here with Royal Mail now is if you get it done before midnight, you can book in a collection next day. So you do that while I'm chatting to you. I'll pick it up in the morning.
You and your fancy Western ways.
Yeah.
I wish if I won a fortune, I'd fly you all here to come and queue in the post office with me, and then you'd see the problem.
Right, I better go anyway. I said I was going
out.
Yeah,
I better as well. Yeah. All right, guys, dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. We'll rant on.
We're still live
next week.
Goodness me.
Be careful.
Be careful out there. Take care, everybody. Cheers. Bye bye.